Hey there, and welcome to my September garden tour of my front yard. Hi you guys, this is Nicole from My Carolina Garden. I garden in Zone 8B, formerly Zone 8A in southeastern North Carolina. Now when I say garden tour, does that mean that I think everything looks picture perfect, no weeds, everything's in its perfect spot? No, of course not. What I mean when I say garden tour is we're checking out how things are doing, growing, maybe suffering, changing month to month throughout the garden year. This way, maybe you can look at some of the things I have, see what's successful, not successful, etc. Get ideas for your own gardens, what you can grow, how to place them, all of that fun stuff. And trust me when I say that I am a watcher of garden tours also, because I love being inspired by other people's gardens. Color choice, placement choice, all of those things make a huge difference. So let me show you what's happening in my front yard garden. And I did some work here recently that you kind of saw some things. So let's go over where everything got placed and how things are doing there. Now, as we jump into this garden tour, I would just like to remind you that if you haven't already subscribed to my channel, please do so, because that is the way to ensure that my videos continue to show up in your feed. So the September garden to me is the beginning of the transition into fall. Some people are a lot further into fall with their decor and everything than I am, but I did want to add seasonal color, fresh plants, and I'm just starting to put my fall decor out. So I do have like my Dragon's Breath Celosia adding the awesome magenta. That's cool. Not necessarily seasonal just for fall, but it adds the color I want. And I have my Vitamum one here that I didn't put into the ground. I have a sweet potato vine. Both of those things I definitely consider to be seasonal. I swapped out my blue garden bench, which is a more summer vibe to me, where I had some seashells as decor before, and I put my black and white one here. I had built this bench last fall as part of a black and white theme that I had for my whole front yard. So it's time to start busting out the black and white again. And of course I did get into some pumpkin. So that is all awesome. Back here, I added in more lemon coral sedum, and the reason I did that is because I had it. I can grow lemon coral sedum like nobody's business. Little tiny pieces of it reroot and start to spread into huge clumps. So I have an area where I have these clumps and I don't need the lemon coral sedum to be there, but here it's a punch of color right along the front walkway. So in speaking of my front walkway here, last time you saw I didn't have my two new Vitamums here in the ground yet, or my decorative cabbage, you know, the one that's going to turn red. In case you missed that video, let me just tell you the name of it. Color Up Red Flowering Cabbage. So this baby that starts out with the green and purple look to it now is actually going to turn red, which I think is so awesome. And then these are called the Vitamum Darling Pink, which again have that unique flower shape to them. So they're not just the standard regular round mums that are so easy to find in every garden center. These may be a little bit more difficult to find, but they're not more expensive. So look around in case you get to find something awesome. Now, a lot of times people don't keep mums as perennials. They just use them in fall flower arrangements or pots or things like that. But of course, mums are generally hardy to Zone 5, so really you can keep them as perennial, and I am going to do that. So even though I put some fall interest in here now, these guys are going to stay in my landscape forever. So the pumpkins are obviously just extra color to be able to have in here, and I wait as long as possible to put the pumpkins out into my yard just so they don't start rotting in the heat. And of course, we've talked a million times about my Dipladenia and my Lantana, both being colorful accents until frost time for my front entryway. So I like to keep as much color as possible going if I can. There's currently a flurry of butterfly activity happening on my Kaleidoscopobelia. So that's another thing that I love, having these later season pollinators still be super active. So the kaleidoscopobelia is amazing for so many reasons. It's an evergreen shrub for me, the way it changes color with the seasons, the fact that it flowers, it's a pollinator attractor, on and on and on. As we look this way a little bit more, I want to tell you also, besides adding in some new plants and a little bit right now of some fall decor, I have re-edged my flower beds. That is hugely important for your whole look of your flower bed, in my opinion. If I have mulch spilling out into the grass, or I have grass invading into my flower beds, I really don't like the way that looks. Having the clean edge, to me, is hugely important. Butterflies everywhere. Okay, so in my last video or so, that's when I did this pot arrangement too that was set up for fall. So I have the sweet potato vine, I have the dragon's breath celosia, and I have my awesome new sun-loving coleus, and this is like the only time it isn't gonna have sun throughout the whole day. Still on the fence about how much I love the design of it. Right now it's sitting in the landscape, may or may not move it to a different spot, perhaps over onto that black and white bench so it has a more prominent place. But for now, that's where it is. And one of those reasons is because of this. This is the strawberry Sunday hydrangea. It's probably difficult to see because it has the dark foliage against the dark mulch, but I've mentioned recently that I've had deer pressure. I have not had deer pressure probably in, I want to say, 5 years or more like 8 years, I bet. And I think a lot of the reason is this was a new construction neighborhood. This is an area that is building very quickly, and so there's construction happening everywhere, so the deer were kind of all over the place, scurrying, looking about. Well, now I seem to have at least one guy coming into my garden all the time, munching on things. So my poor little hydrangea got munched. I told you about some flower pots that got munched over there. It's a new challenge for me, let's just say that. So until this guy gets bigger, we're going to keep adding decor into this area to fill up some of the spaces. So as we're looking in my Peninsula garden, we're kind of just starting in a weird angle because of where the sun is. A lot of the things I actually have are pretty cold tolerant plants. So Liriope or Liriope is here. I have Dianthus here, blanket flowers, the mums. I have the Denver daisy rudbeckia, which is that awesome yellow with the brown center there. A lot of those things are more or less hardy to zone 5. So it's pretty cool because, yeah, I'm in zone 8. I get to enjoy these things maybe longer, but a whole lot of us get to keep these things as perennials. So that's really awesome. Now, my idea here with the updates that I made in this flower bed, like adding these, what are you? Adding the demi-pink garden mums, again, chosen for their yellow centers. I added things like that. I clipped things back. I re-edged the front of the flower bed, as I said. Did that kind of stuff to add color, to add freshness. Oh, it's so thrilling to see how many butterflies are out right now. So I feel like I have a good amount of color happening in my September front yard garden beds. That's really exciting. And as we transition further into fall, I'm going to be taking serious looks at DIY garden decor, any evergreens that I could pop into spots where I can see that I have holes or I could really use some more color. Those are the types of things I'm going to be looking out for. So some of the other things I have that are adding color and dimension in here are my guara. So these are both guara plants right here, and look at the delicate flower on top of this. That looks like a butterfly on top of its foliage. I love it. I have some canna lilies, like this coral one here, this red one here. Canna lilies are sporadic bloomers, so sometimes I could have a whole lot of blooms at once, sometimes not so many. My blanket flowers, of course, I always say how easily they self-seed, so I end up with a whole sea of blanket flowers. They are not sporadic bloomers. They keep going as long as I keep those guys deadheaded. Now, I want to show you something else that is a favorite for me and is a staple to my garden specifically, are my boulders. This one actually came from upstate New York, and I just wanted to point out the gorgeous moss that's on it because I do not have a lot of moss in my full sunflower beds. this really thrills me and excites me. So I just wanted to show you that. Now I do keep changing the angle of the camera because I don't want the sun to be too intense in one angle or another. But I also wanted to point out my zebra grasses. In the fall, they do get these feathery plumes on top, which is nice because it adds like an extra special look to any of the decorative grasses that you have. But as you can see, my grasses took an extra special beating from some wind in a storm we had yesterday, which makes them very floppy, makes them all over the place. So you kind of have to be okay with that happening as well. Especially here in coastal North Carolina, we get a lot of wind, and so a lot of things end up being floppy. Recently, I was talking to you about fall foliage and some plants that offer fabulous foliage this time of year as well as other times of the year. But the Cordyline was one of the plants that I was recommending for a real pop of dynamic color. It was the electric pink Cordyline, and for me, like, I have only overwintered it. I have never kept it out in my ground to try to keep it as perennial. But what I wanted to point out was this type of Cordyline, which is just, I'm not even sure the name of it. Probably everyone knows it's a more standard red spike kind. This one I do keep out in my landscape. I always have. I am able to actually separate the pups on the Cordyline because it kind of grows out from different center points, and then you could divide those up. So this is a division from a parent plant that I have in my backyard, but I did just want to point it out as also another piece of beautiful foliage. And I'm not sure I would call this evergreen. It doesn't drop all of its leaves, but it also doesn't stay looking like awesome all winter long. So it's not meant in my situation to be like a winter focal point, but perennial nonetheless. And I wanted to make sure I showed that to you. There are probably hundreds and hundreds of kinds of dahlias. I just wanted to give a little ode to the dahlia and say that this little guy has been planted in my landscape, I mean, since last year. So it comes back as perennial here for me, and dahlias are perennial about to zone 8. So I'm lucky that I get some to come back. But, well, maybe it wasn't thriving all summer long. Now that the weather's turning a little bit cooler and some of your main summer flowers are starting to die back, all of a sudden the dahlias just burst open with cheerfulness, and you're just like, holy cow, I'm so thankful that I have the dahlias planted in my flower beds. So I wanted to point out the Grande dahlia, and when we get to my backyard garden tour, I'll show you some of the other beauties that I have there. But oh my gosh, ray of sunshine right here. I know I have a lot of Artemesia fans out there because it's something that I get a lot of comments about. So I have this Artemesia here and another one just like it there. I really do love the silver. Even more than that, I think I love the ground cover effect of it because, quite frankly, I don't want to always add tons of mulch into my flower beds, and so having ground covers take up some of the space is really awesome. But I also would like to show you this Scent First Tickled Pink Dianthus with this bloom right here. Well, bud right here. I had some blooms on here just recently that I did want to show you, and guess what? That same deer, or maybe it's more than one, ate it right up. I am now currently spraying for the deer and rabbit spray to hopefully prevent this kind of stuff from happening before. It was just all such a surprise to me. I just was not prepared for it before. But I do have another bud, and that was something else we talked about in the spring with Dianthus. Sometimes Dianthus isn't always like showy with like lots and lots of blooms. It starts largely in the spring, but mine does bloom sporadically throughout the year and just gives me little pops of pink all over the place, which I really love. By the way, you'll notice my extremely full bird bath next to me because, again, that storm was just yesterday. So things are looking a little wet, things are looking a little dragged down, but that's okay. This is the life of a gardener, and we're out here seeing what's up. As I stand over in the flower bed directly across from my Peninsula Garden, I have a few things happening in here, but largely this is not my favorite space. I have been trying to change that and make it be much more awesome, but quite honestly, I'm not spending a lot of time over on this side. What I did want to show you, well, first of all, this is a volunteer crepe myrtle right here, so I guess that guy's got to come out and move to a spot where he can get much bigger. But But I do have the vermilion air right here, the firecracker plant. That is a fall interest plant for me. So you can see, of course, the unusual shaped orange blooms that are on here. That is something that I really love. So the vermilion air here, I do like the golden sword yucca. That is an evergreen plant just because it's cool and it stays colorful like that all year. And then just to go diagonally back, we have the golden euonymus. I also like the golden euonymus for its variegated color and the fact that it's another evergreen shrub. So while some other things are kind of wonky and not necessarily great, like my crepe myrtle here that's suffering, I do have some staple items that are cool and pull things together. So here's what's up. Things like my perennial hibiscus are done. Largely my coneflowers are done, save for a few black-eyed Susans that I may have left. My daylilies that I have in plenty are done. There are a lot of things that are not in bloom right now, but fall is an amazingly wonderful time to plant. That is really cool. We can restructure our gardens a bit. We can look for awesome clearance deals on our garden decor, and again, those staple items that we can put into our gardens that make just everything look better. We can do things like adding our fresh color, like my garden mums. Again, I've planted 3 garden mums equidistantly, even though I have like a curvy flower bed. And I did that to draw your eye from one bright pop of pink to another. So you kind of follow the curves of the bed just by following those. Incidentally, I did the same thing with my pumpkins in my front flower bed closest to the front porch. Same deal. That bright orange draws your eye around the curves of your flower bed. So with all of this in mind, some things are not looking great, some things are still looking awesome, but this is a great time to design and help your flower bed moving forward. I hope you enjoyed my video. I hope you maybe got inspired with some sort of idea. I would love to know if anything in particular did inspire you, because that drives me and helps me to move forward to make other great videos for you. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel so my videos can be shown in your feed. And until next time, happy planting.